ahead and call the concurrent meeting of Western Regional Water Commission, Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission to order for November 5th, 2025 at 1:31. And we'll start out with a roll call.
I'm going to start with WRWC. Paul Anderson.
Here.
Clara Andriola. Present. Alexis Hill. Susan Sever. Here. Naomi Durr. Here. Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor. Mary Luz Garcia. Miguel Martinez. Here. We have a quorum. For NNWPC, Casey Menser.
Here.
Chris Melton.
Here.
John Flansburgh.
Here.
Amber Sosa. Here. Michael Widmer.
Present.
Mylin Nguyen. Don Enlow.
Here.
Tara Steele. Here. Daniel Henderson. Here. Eric Crump.
Here.
Eddie Quaglieri.
Here.
Chris Mixon.
Here.
Jennifer Carr. David Kelly. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Would you mind leading us to the pledge?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I have none.
That makes it go a little bit more quickly. Move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. If we could start out with WRWC. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and for the NNWPC, we are looking for a motion for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
We'll move on to item number 5, approval of the minutes from the October 15th, 2025 WRWC meeting. Any changes, concerns with the minutes?
To approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Item 6, approval of the minutes from the October 1st, 2025 Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting. For motion.
I have reviewed the minutes and move to approve.
And we have a motion by Commissioner Flansburgh. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Mount. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
And we'll move on to item number 7, presentation by Raftalis on phase 1A feasibility study on regional planning, management of wastewater utilities and effluent disposal.
All right, can everyone hear me? This is Zach Green from Raftalis.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Before I get started, I wasn't sure if Kim or anyone else, wanted to do any preamble with respect to the study, or if I should just jump right in.
No, Zach, go ahead and jump right in. But I do want to make a quick note that Member Hill is on Zoom now.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to present our findings from this phase 1A feasibility study of regional wastewater and effluent management. Phase 1A was tuned pretty broadly, I would say, without a lot of analysis, but with a lot of conversation. So the goal of this phase was to identify regional wastewater challenges and objectives by having a lot of discussions with all of you folks. That includes staff and electeds. And that allowed the consulting team to digest a lot of what's been going on in the region and distill what this feasibility study is really about. From my perspective, I think we've gone further and faster in certain ways, which has been great. And, you know, looking forward to sort of sharing what we found today. So what I'm going to go through is just a bit of study background in terms of what the scope was and who was involved. And then I'll focus on those key findings in terms of challenges and objectives, and then talk a little bit about next steps, and we can happy to answer any questions about the findings after that. So the project team did involve 3 firms. I think you've all, for the most part, gotten to know us by now. So I won't dwell on this too much. I don't think we have to do a round of introductions. You'll be hearing from a few of us today as we present and then in the Q&A. But the firms involved were Raftellus, which is my firm, Zanhero, Gwenmore Tully's with us from there, and Jacobs was involved as well, although they're not with us today. But they were very helpful in terms of getting us oriented on the front end of the project, given their involvement in the region. So what this phase involved, as I mentioned, is sort of documenting regional wastewater challenges and what the objectives are in exploring further regionalization. The outcome will be a report that we're in the process of developing our first draft of, that you'll have the opportunity to comment on before a final report is issued. In terms of the subsequent phases that were included in our amended proposal, I'm going to save discussion of that for the end. I think, you know, what we thought those phases are, those future phases, is in part still true, but some of that has evolved given, you know, I think where we land at the end of phase 1A. So I'll come back to 1B and 1C. In terms of the work we completed in phase 1A, so what this really involved is a lot of document review, data and sort of initial research to make sure that we understood sort of everything was available. A lot of that information, you know, should we have the opportunity to continue to work with you guys, will be beneficial for analytical tasks that are yet to begin. But they were also just helpful in terms of preparing the consulting team for the conversations. So we interviewed staff and then elected officials as well. And we followed up with staff on the initial conversations. And then our third session with staff was really focused around 8 sort of topic areas that have a nexus with the sort of key challenges that we identified. Those are shown on the right. I'm not going to go through all of those right now because I think it's somewhat redundant with some of the future slides and the challenges. But suffice it to say, I thought from what I heard, I wasn't able to attend as I just was blessed to have my second child. But from what I heard, these were very productive sessions, and I've been briefed on what was discussed. The nice thing was that it allowed us to get through some of the complexity rather than having, you know, an hour with each community. These sessions allowed us to take an hour on one topic and sort of dive a little deeper on it. And I thought they were impactful in that sense. In terms of the participants from your side, without going through all of these, I just want to say we had really good participation and engagement across all of our 3 trips out to the region. And this is across sort of a broad range of folks, you know, finance, engineering, leadership, and electeds. And so I think that allowed us to really kind of understand what you guys are struggling with and how regionalization might be impactful in, you know, charting a better path forward. All right, so I do want to get into kind of the meat of the findings now. First, I'm going to start with the identified challenges. So there were approximately 8 of these. As I said, we had 8 sessions in our last visit out to the region. The first thing I want to say about what we identified here is that it's very hard to talk about one without talking about the other. These are all interrelated, but I'll do my best to try to briefly summarize them. So in terms of wastewater management in the region, there are capacity limitations that are already bumping up against growth pressures and are expected to be exacerbated as the region continues to grow. Capacity limitations mean different things in different parts of the region. In some cases, we're talking about a plant's ability to handle nutrients, so not necessarily a hydraulic capacity. In other places, you might be talking about an effluent reservoir's capacity. In other places, you may be talking about reuse demand. So it means different things in different places. And as I said, there's this nexus. I don't want to start talking about the next one while I'm talking about this one, but let's keep moving through. So you have capacity limitations that are coming, some of which are here now, some of which are going to be more intensive over time. You have nutrient regulations where there's some uncertainty in terms of what is to come, but that are having impacts on what is the capacity limitation. So when we talk about nutrients, we're talking about the loadings in the wastewater as opposed to the flow. So those are things like nitrogen and phosphorus. And so effluent management and the quality of that effluent is dictated by regulations. There are some draft regulations that are expected to change that have been issued by the state and federal regulators. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there, but it impacts wastewater management in the region. So what we know is that regardless of where the regulations go or where the growth comes from in the region, there are some significant long-term capital investment needs coming, and that those may be more challenging to manage separately than together. In addition, there's a nexus of wastewater, water, and stormwater. When you think about wastewater effluent reuse, that is a water supply demand. When you think about a closed versus an open basin for effluent disposal, that has a nexus with water rights. And when you think about what's coming into your pipes and what's going into the water bodies, there's a nexus with stormwater as well. So there's complexity there, and there's a question as to whether that is better managed separately or together. In terms of how all this is governed and paid for and funded, right now there's variability in that. There are multiple layers of governance, there are different modes of cost recovery, and that just leads to complexity. It can lead to uncertainty for developers when costs are different and cost recovery is different in one area versus another. And there's a question as, again, whether that could be more aligned and simpler under a single governance structure. There's varied sort of operational responsibilities among the wastewater entities. Some staffs, wastewater staff are asked to do many things in addition to wastewater. And so that can be challenging just from a workload standpoint. Stormwater management is one area where that is the case for certain jurisdictions. Stormwater is something that has been included in this scope, with some question marks, but because it's another significant area of capital need with a nexus to wastewater and currently overlapping resourcing for some of the communities. Across all of these challenges, there are sort of a complex layer of interlocal agreements that allow for significant collaboration currently, but also maybe slow down decision-making and make things a little more complex than they might be under alternative governance modes. I'm going to pass it to Gwen Moore from Zenhero briefly, talk about the next slide, which gets a little bit at kind of the one water aspect. And we have a visual here that kind of, I think will help represent some of that should be familiar to a lot of you. Go ahead, Gwen Moore.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Zach. Yeah, I think what Zach is talking about in the last slide, the challenges are sort of embedded at some level completely within the schematic, how water and wastewater and water reuse is moving throughout the region. And this was an effort to really simplistically capture that these are sort of the regional water asset portfolio, as I call it. All the components of your portfolio are embedded sort of in this one region, and optimizing those assets in the context of the Truckee River operations and the requirements there are really important. So the idea here was to show how water moves through the wastewater, to the customers and then to the wastewater treatment facilities and then potentially into other uses, whether it's ponds or wetlands or reclaimed water down the road. So the effort here really is to show the integration of this water asset portfolio, and that the way we're going to be looking at governance of this needs to be representative of this.
Thanks, Gwenmore. Next thing I want to touch on briefly is the regionalization objective. So the way we kind of moved through this phase 1A was to try to say, what are the problems? And then what are we trying to do when we talk about a regionalization feasibility study? What are the hypotheses that we have in terms of what we might be able to achieve if we undergo some sort of regional transition? And so those are identified as the following: the potential for enhanced financial and administrative efficiency. So maybe bending the cost curve so that it's less steep over time. And then simplifying, decision-making with respect to wastewater and investment timelines and things like that. Integrating water resource management. So that's kind of the one water aspect that we were just talking about. There are certain aspects of planning that are easier to potentially accomplish under one governance structure. An example of that might be advanced purified water projects like what's going on in North Valleys, where we already have sort of the water utility and the wastewater utility involved. Operational optimization and reliability is really just referring to, trying to deliver a high quality of service over time as costs rise and the challenges become more complex, and then ensuring, a good level of service across the region that's also, affordable. Strategic planning and problem solving, I think is gets at governance, right? If you have multiple layers, that process can be slowed down. There maybe is little bit less ability to control sort of a strategy and a vision for the region if multiple parties are pulling in different directions instead of one all in the same direction. And then, this aspect has kind of been emphasized or minimized in different parts of our conversation, but we see it as certainly important for economic development. Providing certainty, providing sort of maybe more equal treatment or more clarity to those that are investing in the region and helping it grow from a wastewater management standpoint, I think is another aspect that's come up. Now, some have said, developers are one of our constituencies, but maybe they're not the only one. So I think there's each of these, the weight of them is not necessarily something that we're getting at here. I apologize for those alerts that keep popping up on my screen here. So we're not necessarily placing a weight on all of these things, but these are certainly some of the objectives that came up through the study. So I think there were also important pieces where, or aspects of the conversations where folks kind of said, we need to make sure we don't move too fast, or that we're not overlooking, certain obstacles and concerns as we go about this feasibility study. So loss of local control is a big one of those. So there needs to be certainty if there is some sort of regional transition that folks are represented, that the governance structure is reflecting the differences across the region and allowing the communities that currently control their own destiny to have a voice in a regional entity, if that's where this goes. So that's definitely maybe the biggest one. Financial and resource equity is very important and something that I think we will focus on potentially in the next phase of this, should that move forward. What that's really about is making sure that the dollars of the utility are invested equitably across the region, that there is compensation where there needs to be for assets in place that have been maybe paid for by some but not others, but could be regionalized in the future. There's concerns about governance complexity, in the current state, but also the political will to sort of move beyond it. There are roles that would change through a transition like this in terms of where the responsibility lies for decision making, and so that I think relates to loss of local control, but is more about the governance structure that would result from any kind of transition. Labor relations and staffing, There's organized labor considerations. There's roles that could change. And so all of these things, I think, are areas of pause. People want to understand how would my role change if this went regional. The differences in the priorities of one part of the region versus another and between the agencies. These are things that where we certainly observe variability, and the question is, how would a regional entity prioritize an investment in one area versus another under a single entity? So I think there's a lot of questions about how that could be done in an elegant way that makes the most sense for the region. And then just sort of momentum and risk aversion, right? It can be hard to get through or certainly get beyond a feasibility study given all the concerns above. I think there have been significant regional transitions in the region on the water side before. Those were maybe a little bit different. So some of these concerns are unique to this situation, and some of them I think are based on lessons learned from prior transitions. This slide's just a schematic that I think was helpful in those 8 sessions that occurred most recently. What this really highlights is that there's kind of a spectrum here of things you can do when you talk about regionalization. There are things ranging from, shared services and collaboration that really is already happening, to maybe partial consolidation of facilities, which again, really is already happening if you think about a facility like Tumworth. And then there's full regional consolidation. And so when we started this study, I think there was this question as to where on this continuum we were looking to go, or if it was all on the table. By the end of phase 1A, I think we've heard from the participants, especially in the most recent meetings, that there's maybe a narrower end of the spectrum that is the desired state of the study. That doesn't mean there's been any decision to move forward with these things. But in terms of what the feasibility should focus on, I think the reality of all the collaboration that's already going on makes some of the things over to the right more worth spending consulting dollars on to study than the things over to the left, because you guys already do a lot of service sharing and regional collaboration. So just a couple more slides, and then I'll open it for questions. The major takeaways are really that collaborative efforts would simply amount to the status quo. So trying to figure out a bunch of functions or activities where you guys could better work together, when those opportunities emerge or are evident, it's already being done. So the goal of the feasibility study is not necessarily going to look at small bites at the apple that we would frame as collaborative efforts. At least that's what we were told in the most recent set of sessions, and we think that makes a lot of sense. Fair compensation, cost allocation across ratepayers and agencies, those were universal priorities in the most recent conversations. I think there's sort of an eagerness to get to what does this mean from a dollar standpoint for my community, and so I think some of those things we can start getting into in the next phase. There were conversations that were had around whether wastewater, if it's looked at regionally, should be its own thing, or whether water and wastewater just make sense to be managed under a single entity. And what we are hearing is that a one water model is thought to enable sort of decision-making, investments, operations that are the best thing for the region. That because of the realities of the relationships between these things, which at a high level were highlighted on that schematic that Gwen Moore walked through, that the thought is that if we're going to regionalize, that it should be under a single entity, not a separate wastewater entity. There's a feeling that there's a strong sense of collaboration right now, and that the major investment needs that the region knows are coming is driving this study of regionalization at this time. I think what folks were trying to communicate there is really, let's keep going. We have some momentum. There are more good feelings than bad about the possibilities for this. There are major questions that need to be answered, but that it makes a lot of sense to sort of look at this with the next level of detail. I think that optimizing, in terms of optimizing potable water, wastewater, and reuse, considering the return flows of the Truckee or the closed basin issues to the south. You know, I think the goals are across all of those things. This kind of relates to that one water model that I was mentioning before, but I think what this one's really getting at is just the recognition that all of these things are interrelated and they likely should be managed under a single organization. Now that includes stormwater as well, but I think there's a recognition that because you're starting from a different place on stormwater, in terms of different aspects of the region, maybe having a revenue source versus not, that one may be more complex. And it should not obstruct regional initiatives around wastewater, but it should still be included in the scope. So what that exactly means, I think, is to be determined. I think there's a question of, you know, if we look at asset valuation, do we initially just do that for wastewater? If we look at a transition to a regional entity, does that initially only include wastewater, or does all this happen at once? I don't think we have the answers to that. But I think in the long term, there was a feeling that ideally this would be part of what we're referring to as that one water organizational model. A few more big picture points. I think I'm going to let Kevin maybe walk through this one. This will just kind of tie it all together. Go ahead, Kevin.
Sure, Zach. Good afternoon, everyone in the room. Nice to be with you. Yeah, this is, you know, trying to distill all the prior slides and some of those takeaways in the immediately, or the immediately prior slide. So something we heard, I think, loud and clear the last time we were in the region, was that the status quo works by necessity, but it's largely suboptimal for all agencies, for all parties. Zach talked about the second one to some degree, about wastewater capacity limitations, and that some of those are real from an infrastructure standpoint, either now or in the very near term, but some is, you know, call it a paper constraint, if you will, where we have capacity, unused capacity locked up based on agreement constraints or ownership of assets. The third thing there is that we heard that we think from a resource management standpoint that stormwater could have significant benefits in the long term as being incorporated in this one water model, but for the reasons that Zach laid out, it may prove politically problematic. The fourth one, I think we already hit home on, about a single regional entity being the strong sentiment of the group, mindful that that would require an equitable transition of assets in either in those transactions. And then if, you know, as you go on this long journey, if a single agency is not viable, what may be kind of a fallback or a secondary option is this idea of aligning the sewer sheds with respective treatment facilities. And so those collection and conveyance systems based on the facilities that treat and dispose of effluent.
Thanks, Kevin. The other thing I want to say is that there's one agency that I don't think is interested in regionalization of wastewater. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that, you know, we have obviously 4 different wastewater agencies and 1 water agency kind of at the table here. And I think 3 of the wastewater agencies are interested if there's an equitable solution in potentially making this transition. But for the 4th wastewater agency, I think there's a feeling that the status quo is kind of working well for them. So I didn't want to move forward without acknowledging that. And you know who you are. All right, this is the last slide before Q&A, and I appreciate you letting us go a few minutes longer than was planned. So phase 1B and 1C, I think 1B was really about, once we've identified the challenges and objectives, what are the regional models? You know, it was really, we weren't sure if we would get to the point where we would have a feeling that, you know, would this be wastewater separate? Would this be treatment only? Would this be water and wastewater? It feels like for many in the room, we sort of have a vision of what that looks like. And so some of what this next phase might be over, say, the next 6 to 8 months, I think changes a little bit. I think that some of the aspects in green around asset valuation, around understanding kind of the regulatory requirements for the water balance, and detailing the benefits of increasing recycled water over time. Maybe on the table in the next phase, sort of maybe determining what would upfront compensation look like under a regional model or under a sewer shed model. So rather than spending as much time figuring out what is the model, I think from what we've heard, folks are itching to maybe learn more about what the financial implications are. And so if that's the case, and we're working to develop a scope for the next phase, we're willing to move faster in that sense, if you'd like to. The public education aspects that are highlighted in the green, from our perspective, should be further afield, maybe after the next 6 to 8 months. There might be more information or a better sense of where this is all going. So a lot came up around stakeholder engagement. We don't think it's now necessarily. From there, the next phase of 1C would really get into the detail on organizational structure, staffing, collective bargaining, rates, and annual revenue requirements, as opposed to just what the upfront compensation might be. So that's a little bit more into sort of implementation planning in the weeds. That's future phases. I don't think we get there in the next 6 months necessarily. Thanks again for giving us a little bit more time today and a lot of time over the last 6 months or so. It's been great working with you all, and happy to answer any questions about what we've learned so far.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. And Kim, did you want to add anything before we go to the commissioners?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So what I would like to add is this is a reporting phase. They will be presenting a final report for phase 1A to us in and correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, I'm thinking January timeframe is what we talked about for the phase 1A report.
I'd say before then. Yeah. Which
means we can bring it because of our meeting schedule to the boards in January. So
Yeah.
we would anticipate that with whatever recommendations they have as they develop the report. And now would be a good time for any comments or questions or things that you feel like you want to have included, or something that feels uncertain, or it would be a great time to have that discussion.
I'll tell you what, if we could maybe open it in an order around, if y'all have anything that you would like to ask or any comments you'd like to make.
No questions. Although I will say, 43-year veteran, it's the same thing consultants had to say in the 1990s and early 2000s. Is one entity controls water and sewer, so it's interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to react to that a little bit, I mean, I think at certain points in the conversations, folks sort of said, well, what is common around the country? What is common in the West? And certainly we see both models. If there is interest in looking at case studies in the region or around the country, that's another aspect that could be considered in future phases of work.
Thank you.
I would just say, as a representative of the Pyramid Lake Tribe, we'd hope to be included in any future stakeholder processes. Thanks for concerning.
Absolutely. I think Kim and I have talked about that, and we would expect that to be the case and look forward to it.
Okay, so Zach, I was involved in a lot of meetings. We had a fair amount of collaboration. So you said that there was one group that likes the status quo where it is. That isn't as obvious to me. So not sure, not to call it out, but just saying, I guess I am calling it out.
Yeah, you are.
Well, I think he's referring to Sun Valley PID.
Okay.
And what we stated is we're not opposed to a regional, but that doesn't necessarily mean we would give up our wastewater power.
Okay.
So we're not necessarily opposed to a regional wastewater company or one company running it. But not necessarily giving up SCGIE's wastewater power. That's
Okay, so obviously, Sun Valley, you've got your collection system, you've got your some agreements in place for capacity. So those are the things that you're speaking of. So, okay.
correct.
All right, that helps. Thank you. I probably have lots of other questions, but no, I think it was a really great process and appreciate the opportunity to be involved and work with all of my peers. It was fun.
Thanks, guys.
Good right now, thank you.
Well, I guess I have two comments. One, I am really interested in your case studies, like I'm very interested to see how others do it in the in the West, let's say. And I don't know if it's like 50-50 or most of them do it one way or the other. So I think it'd be very helpful to have a few examples we could understand. And let's see. The second thing, there was one more thing I was gonna ask. Yeah, I guess that's it for right now.
Yeah, and I've seen, utilities as part of studies like this do really significant efforts where we not only gather everything in public domain, we go through a process to identify peer utilities of interest. I've done it for up to 20, where we then kind of go through all their financials and do benchmarking. And then we go out and we interview their finance folks and their engineering folks and their executive management folks and try to really understand those organizations and why their metrics look the way they do compared to those involved in the study. So you can do that really intensively, not at all, or just a little bit. Some people find it instructive. Some people at the end of it say, well, we're different. Labor costs are different there. I don't think it's relevant. And other people, find it really insightful. So,
Well, I think that it is easy to dismiss these things because they're not us, right? Everything's
Right.
different about if you dial down to our local, everything, our costs, our organization, our geography. But the other question I basically did have was when you said one water, meaning one entity, did it go further than that? Was there a thought of forming a brand new entity? Was that discussed, or was there a thought of centralizing with any existing entity?
I can be pretty frank about what I think I heard that meant, although I wasn't in the room when it got to that stage. Kevin, I don't want to overstep, so maybe I'll let you take that one, just to make sure we don't go too far.
I'll try and be tactful about what we heard, but I think from our notes from the conversation, the thought was that having kind of let's call it a peer or a sibling entity on the wastewater side akin to TUMWA wouldn't be the best idea to kind of have a parallel wastewater authority, and that one entity would be best. Now, what that may or may not look like, folding under the existing regional water authority, a new authority, et cetera, that's to be determined. But the sentiment was that what is not attractive is to have kind of a parallel regional wastewater
Well,
authority.
that's helpful. I mean, because we sort of have a parallel flood organization, a much smaller scale, but it is a standalone parallel with a board, with similar structure, with ability to bond, all of that. So, but what you're saying is for wastewater, they said that probably wouldn't be the best, it'd be better to consolidate.
And I think and I'd lean on folks in the room as well, but for the reasons that Zach walked through and Gwen Moore walked through, that we have so much interrelationship with all things water, with return flows and water rights management, reuse, the future with indirect and direct potable reuse possibly. So just how interrelated both are, that it would be kind of a half step, and it would still cause to have two entities that would have to then still be collaborating, communicating, harmonizing things across two different agencies, two different management organizations, two different boards.
Okay, thanks.
I could weigh in a little bit too. I mean, it starts even from the source water. The choice of where the source water comes from has impacts to the wastewater treatment plants. to the return flow requirements. So all things, we have a lot of collaboration we do now with Tumwa. And so it would make sense that you had one organization that was, you know, overseeing all those things. And then you think about one of the main objectives of the regional water commission is to have the regional water management plan. And if you think about that, almost under one water agency, you would just about have that covered. The only nuance you have there is you've got stormwater versus flooding. And so, you know, quantity versus quality kind of things as well, but there's a lot of collaboration.
Other questions?
No questions.
I don't have a lot of questions. I'll just comment that I appreciate the overview, the time that you all spent in interviewing and getting to know our region and sort of putting that into presentation for us. It was sort of hard to see the diagram of the water flow and conveyance, so I'd
Yeah.
love to get a copy of that if
Sure.
possible, just to see from your perspective what it looks like. But I really appreciate you outlining, you know, not just the limitations in growth, but the capital investment needs, F1 management, and some of those bigger issues that are on the horizon for each one of our jurisdictions. And I think it's imperative that we work together to find a solution before all of this comes to a head and we are forced to make I guess faster decisions than we have the ability to do now, and have the ability to have these conversations and actually go back and forth and relay the options and look at everything from different perspectives. So hopefully, as we move through phases 1A, 1B and 1C, we can come to the end and figure out what's best for our region as a whole.
Well, now that we've been outed. I was very appreciative that you actually came out and spent time with us in the valley. Sometimes the little guys get left out, and we did appreciate it. We learned a lot, and I hope you learned a lot too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was great learning about your organization, and your perspective will be treated equally to everyone else's.
Thank you. I don't have anything.
You did enough.
We'll open it up one more time because there may be some more questions, but I'm sorry.
Maybe our members online.
Yeah, I just want to just get a clarification on that timing next steps. Could you run through that one more time just to make sure I'm clear about it?
Yes, and Zach can help you with this too. That the next steps are they're going to prepare the report that summarizes phase 1A. And Zach, I'll let you kind of expand on what will be included in that and how we're going to work through recommendations and scope of work for the next phases.
Sure. So like I said, we did submit a proposal with multiple phases at the front end of this process, and only the first one was approved, knowing that the nature of phase 1B and 1C, you know, might change. And I think they're all deemed phase 1 with the recognition that getting fully through a transition like this is a long process. So, you know, even if we get through 1B in the next 6 months, and then we get through 1C, you know, 6 months to a year after that, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's a new entity and everything's, you know, everything's transitioned. So it takes time. Our vision is that over the next 6 months, a further clarification of the governance models and alternative models. Like I said, that sort of smaller step to a sewer shed alignment model. So call those 2 alternative scenarios, full regionalization or the sewer shed model, that we could get through a process that would kind of flesh out the governance on those, that would identify the assets, their depreciated values and their condition, and then begin opining on what compensation might be like for the undepreciated portion and paid-in portions of those assets, and begin that process of financialization. I don't think we would get through by June of 26 a revenue requirement, a staffing model, a rate impact. I think that is a longer exercise. But what we think makes sense is to start. That's put some was fun, public authority. There's a vision in the room that is of what are the numbers kind of and what the rate impacts are. And so we can't that we're going to be developing to get to you WRWC if ref the job, hopefully here.
Thank you, Zach. Anyone?
I don't have any questions to talking. Proceed with next. Thank you.
I do have a comment. That last 2-day work. I think I can be more aligned involving water alignment and the comment. I won't even go to him. Seeing what other gotta not waiting for if never issue on Parks or Washoe County and room working through all the issues together and we come to a consensus. And I think the possibilities are really tremendous if we could have that same type of an approach on the wastewater effluent management side of things. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll move it back to the room here. Any other from here in the room that anyone would like to bring up?
Could I just acknowledge Kim and her team? I don't know how on earth you wrangled schedule from all of the different entities, both the staff and the elected officials, but I thought that was a tremendously successful effort on behalf of WRWC. So I just wanted to recognize you.
Thank you very much.
I'd second that. They really made it easy for us. Not that this isn't a complex process, but WRWC was like a project manager extension and really helped with scheduling and setting up these conversations. and doing a great job kind of bringing the room along. So I appreciate it, Kim and Birgit.
Thank you. We have 12 Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission members and 9 WRWC members, multiple agencies. So sometimes it's herding cats, but everybody works really well with us and we couldn't do it unless we had that collaboration. So thank you for making it easier for us.
Right, and if we don't have any other comments, questions, I think we're ready to move on to item number 9, Program Manager's Report. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the commission on this beautiful windy day. This item I typically bring to Water Planning Commission meetings. The Western Regional Board doesn't always see these quarterly revenue and expense and project reports. So it might be a little bit new to our Western Regional members and not so new to our Water Planning Commission members. Let me see, I don't have the clicker. So Jen, could you, thank you so much. So what, if you look in your board packet under agenda item 8, you'll see A, B, C, and D attachments. And the reason I have A and B is because I didn't have time with the schedule with the Water Planning Commission to give the end of the year quarterly report for fiscal year 25. So I included that to make sure that you have the updates. But the real meat of today is just giving a report through the first quarter of this fiscal year. And so that focuses on attachments C and D in your board packet. So this is just an opportunity for staff to update the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission on the various projects and what was accomplished in those projects. I've combined a little bit of the last quarter of fiscal year 25 and the first quarter of fiscal year 26. So in our shared work program, that is a program that we have at the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. Director Smith and I work together with our staff to advance regional coordination and the development of digital mapping tools. They help us with our website upgrades and most recently have finished, and we're working on login credentials and security on a documents library. We have about 600 historical documents in regional water planning that we want to make available to our member agencies. Some of those are dated, but the information is there. So we want to make sure that that library is accessible, clickable, and searchable for our partner agencies. So we're excited to launch that this next quarter. And we also added an email subscription so that we can send out a mass email to everybody with announcements, board meetings, and such. For the wastewater regionalization feasibility study, I won't go into that because you just heard a lengthy presentation on where we're at with that. So I'm excited that that's continuing to move forward. We'll bring more to the board in our January meetings. The Cold Springs water balance is for the first step of many hydrographic basin model development processes that are going to take place moving forward. But the Cold Springs water balance is focused on looking at water coming into the basin, water going out of the basin, and how development might impact that and how we can plan for facilities and utilities moving forward in that area. So the model was completed. We gave a joint presentation to the Regional Planning Commission and the Regional Planning Governing Board last month, just to give them some information on what the purpose of the study is and how it impacts our planning. And currently, modeling scenarios have been developed. We're going to run a few models on, ultimate build out in that area. They call it breaking the model. They want to put as much in there as they can to see where the model breaks. And what that means is when are we going to need new facilities? When could potential flooding impacts be seen? When would wastewater facilities need to be planned for and capital improvements? So those scenarios are under development and that should be moving forward in the next few months. The Tumwa Water Usage Review Program performed 1,900 residential commercial water audits. That is essentially, they have a crew that goes out and if customers call and say, hey, I'm using a lot of water, they can go out and audit their meter and their water usage and help them to develop a plan to conserve water and save their One Water Nevada and regional coordination. I kind of lumped these together. This is the assistance that we get through Data Instincts that pretty much coordinates and facilitates the advanced purified water tours that we offer each year to staff and board members. They facilitate and put on the 2025 or the every year, hopefully now, the Truckee River Watershed Symposium. And they're also advancing and helping us with regional coordination on the Regional Water Management Plan update. We were talking about some of those digital tools that Truckee Meadows Regional Planning is helping us with. Nevada Water Innovation Institute is also helping us to develop layers for those tools that will give us better decision-making tools that we can use to look at where are we at with regional planning and what considerations or what actions do we need to take moving forward as far as implementing that plan. Enhanced source control is Nevada Water Innovation Institute has completed a 2-year monitoring program at the Reno Stead Water Reclamation Facility. This is a part of the NDEP permit requirement for the Advanced Purified Water Facility. So what they're doing is doing water quality monitoring to see if there's any constituents that would come into the system that could negatively impact that we plan for through the Advanced Purified, in designing the Advanced Purified Water Facility. And Recycled Water Education Sierra Nevada Journeys they held 13 family STEM nights in 2025 through the summer of 2026 and reaching over 800 people with recycled water education. And they've recently updated their modules that they do at the STEM nights, and I'm going to be implementing those this fall and next spring. They're doing a great job. So real quickly, you'll see attachments 8B and 8D for fiscal year 25. Our revenues totaled to a little over $2 million, and those revenues come from our 1.5% surcharge fees on water bills. And our expenses were $1.5 million. For quarter one in fiscal year 2026, our revenues were $525,000 and our expenses were $176,000. So essentially what this is telling us is after our audit in August, we had no findings in our audit. Our financial health remains stable and it's consistent. This looks exactly like it should. So we're doing good with our finances and our projects and accomplishments. Thank you. And so I'll take questions from the board.
Any questions? That was easy, Kim. All right, we'll move on to number 9. Report, discussion, possible direction to staff concerning the results of the NNWC annual priorities setting session held on October 1st, 2025. Prioritize projects and studies for fiscal year 2027.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Brenton for the record. And you can go ahead and advance the slide. Perfect. So each year, the WRWC staff facilitates a priority setting session, we call it now, with the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. And this session is an annual session to really reaffirm the existing priorities we have based on planning momentum and needs, and to look and see if there's any other priorities or actions that we need to support regionally with regards to water resource planning. And so initially the process is we coordinate with all the member agencies behind the scenes and find out, are there new priorities? Are there things that we need to incorporate into the priority setting projects or concepts that will help us implement the regional water management plan? And so we do that behind the scenes. We create a really cool, what I call a really cool digital tool, so that in our public meeting, we can use this tool. It's a survey so that the board can review the projects. We provide an overview. You'll see in your board packet, it's attachment 9B, with an overview of each of our priorities and projects, and they can rank the priority of project with 1 to 5 stars. And that is to help us determine, since all of our priorities are important, we never want to minimize the importance of a priority or a topic in the regional water management plan, but it allows us to really filter through and say, okay, if we have a certain amount of money in our budget to support these projects, and our projects actually, the expenses on our projects, the cost for the projects are going to be greater than the amount of money that we have. How do we prioritize the projects? And so a 1-star would be, for example, this project is an important project. However, we may be able to put it off for another year. They need full funding. Number 2 would be, this is an important project, but we might partially fund it. Number 3 could be, give us a score of a 3. This project's important and we should definitely consider funding it at least partially. 4 is, this project is super important, let's look at funding it at least partially. And then 5 would be, this is a critical project, we need to fully fund this project that year. And that allows us to score the different priorities and projects and then develop our budget for the next fiscal year. So, Jen, do you want to advance those things? Thank you. So if you look in your board packet, you'll start to see the results in the board packet. And what we first do is have the board members, before they see the projects, we want them to do a brief scoring and ranking of what water management plan focus area topics do they see as the most important. And so the result is, you can see the ranking. The number 1 was the wastewater and effluent management piece. That is very much in alignment with where our focus has been in our priorities over the past 2 or 3 years. Water quality ranked number 2, water supply number 3, flood control and stormwater conveyance number 4, and then regional planning strategic priorities is number 5. And I just wanted to highlight that number 5, the regional planning strategic projects, also includes the update to the regional water management plan. It's things like the Cold Springs water balance. It really involves multiple regional water management plan topics and multiple communities coming together, multiple agencies coming together to participate in that planning effort. Next slide. Okay, and so rather than putting on the screen every single project and how it was ranked, I've done that in the past, and it seems to be way too much information on the screen. I thought I would just highlight the top 7 ranked projects. And so you'll see, if you look at the regional water management plan focus area, you can see the WW, the RPs, and the WQ. So what those are is WW is wastewater topic, RP is regional planning, and WQ is water quality. So if you look at the top ranked projects from the previous slide, this is very much in alignment with wastewater being the top priority and water quality being the second top priority. The reason the regional planning topics came up was because the regional water management plan has to be updated in this next fiscal year. So I think our members recognized that was going to be an important piece overall. Even though it kind of ranked at the bottom in the previous slide, after they started going through the projects, they found that to be an important priority. Okay, next slide. So the outcome is our professional services budget detail. And I believe that is item, yes. So the attachment 9A, you want to look in your board packet under attachment 9A. I summarized it here, but you have more details in the packet. And this is our professional services budget detail. So basically our projects, costs, and list. And you'll see that wastewater rose to the top at it was a budget of $600,000. Water quality, 452, and then regional planning was the 430. So the budget does align with the priority setting. And we do have contingency funds of $800,000, but that is likely to increase or decrease as we finalize the WRWC budget in February, primarily because we have to look at what we've spent this year, what we have left, and how we're going to allocate those funds. So that contingency fund could fluctuate up or down depending on our end of the year numbers. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And Chairman, what we're looking for, Jen, if you want to advance the slide, what we're looking for today is just some recommendations based on what you've seen in incorporating this professional services budget detail into the WRWC fiscal year 27 budget.
Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you. All right. So
I believe that we are looking for a motion to accept the priorities, setting results, and draft tentative professional services budget.
Chair, I'll make a comment here. So what's great, I mean, the luxury we're afforded here is all the work programs that we've been able to basically fund with contingency. There are several projects that we don't have a current scope of work on that we would be able to add in future as those scopes were developed. And so that gives us a lot of comfort. So with that, I would move that we from the Water Planning Commission accept the priority setting results and draft tentative professional services budget detail and recommend to WRWC to incorporate them in fiscal year 2027 tentative budget.
motion.
Second.
Oh, okay.
All right, second, Commissioner Crump. All right, all in favor? All right, motion passes unanimously.
All right, we'll move over to the WRWC side. Any questions or comments before we take a motion? All right, anyone willing to make?
Or you setting results and draft tentative professional service and direct staff to incorporate them into the WRWC fiscal year 2027 tentative budget.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
By saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And discussion, possible direction staff regarding agenda items and dates for future WRWC and NNWC.
Thank you, Chairman, and I can for the record. So I have up on the screen our meeting schedule through March. We already went through the annual meeting schedule for next year, the previous Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting and WRWC meeting. The January meetings are scheduled for January 7th for the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. It will be at 1:30 in the Washoe County Chambers. And WRWC is scheduled January 21st at 8:30 in this. Just to note our milestone. Enough with the wastewater regionalization report and scope of work coming forward. We'll have that as another agenda item for our January meetings. I'm sorry, I skipped over December. We don't hold December meetings, so everybody have a happy December. The Nevada Water Planning Commission and February 18th for the WRWC. Milestone meetings for us, and primarily because in March we will be so we will not. So
I have a question. Just a question on the scheduling. For our 19th meeting or?
yes,
So
so
this,
yes, so there will not be a November 19th meeting for the WRWC. It'll be
Okay.
the last meeting.
I'm not sure if anyone's here. We canceled. Okay, great.
There are questions before we move on? On this or? No? Go on to item number 11. Anyone in the public wishing to speak? Any of the commissioners have any comments or anyone on the commission? No?
Happy holidays.
Happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.
All right, with that, we'll go. Thank you very much.